Let me change the lighting here. Alright, better. Hey, so this is the 6th and final episode of The Spirit of Intimacy by Sobonfu Somé. And yeah, it feels good. Last night's episode, there were a couple of chapters. Hold on, let me switch this lighting a little more. I like that a little better. I gotta get this lighting together, huh? But in last night's story, her bedtime story, there was a lot of information about conflict resolution. And honestly, it's something that I've been thinking about a lot in the past 24 hours. Why do I deal with conflict in the way that I do? Why, as someone who was, born and from a very young age have been exceptionally blunt and had very strong boundaries and thinking about what led that chip away for a very long time. I'm gonna spare you all of that. I think I may actually do a YouTube vlog on that, because honestly it was super eye-opening, just examining the ways that the Dagar people handle conflict resolution, and also thinking of conflict resolution and thought form and processing as it relates to thought forms through my time in cognitive processing therapy, which was interesting. So that opened a big can of worms. I hope you got something out of the previous reading. It was pretty fantastic in my perspective. It's always great when you hear one thing and it kind of opens up a door to exploring your own personal experiences and going deeper within the mind. It's fantastic. Let me adjust one candle here. There we go. I like to see that candle and be able to see that photo when I look up in the camera here. That's my sister's candle, so I like to have her with me. So, in any case, I took an ACV shot beforehand to try and clear out some congestion. And it's I don't feel sick at all. My my mucus production has been a little bit up because of the awesome amount of cake that I've been eating the past couple days. There's a lot of cake, big cake. But that's getting better, and honestly, as someone who thoroughly believes in internal turmoil and exploration contributing to physical manifestations of trauma, I'm gonna say that all of this that I've been doing lately, as far as speaking my truth and voicing it both here and in my everyday real life, is really got my throat chakra kind of clearing up. My voice even sounds different, which really weirds me out. I love hot water. I want to start off by saying I am truly grateful for being able to read stories at night, because in all honesty, it's really helped. Like, I started this to help me out with my sobriety, give me something to do at night so that I didn't get tempted to, go out or stay in drinking. And it's been so immensely helpful. Just having that commitment to myself to not be slurry or drunk at 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. So it feels good. Thank you if you're watching this. So we're starting off with chapter 12. The chapter is entitled, you see there's vine in there, Divorce and Loss, Cutting the Vine. So I don't remember much about this chapter from my first reads here. So let's see if I enjoy it. There's the spirit of intimacy there. And let go. Divorce and Loss, Cutting the Vine, Chapter 12. The growth of a relationship is enhanced by constant compromise, letting go, and healing. You notice the small difficulties and remove them from your way. By doing so, you reaffirm the larger scale. Small difficulties are just distractions in your forward path. This understanding is one of the reasons why relationships are approached so differently in the village. It's also perhaps why in the Tagara language there is still no word for divorce. In the village, marriage between two people is like entering into a house with no exit. That sounds like a nightmare, a house with no exit. That's not the case in the modern world. There are so many options. If something doesn't work, change it. A situation stinks, go somewhere else. The multiplicity of options prevents people from dealing with the issues that could have made them grow. However attractive options are, this is their shadow side. They often hide the best choice, which is to stand up to things. One might argue that this is freedom of choice, but many of the choices we face are offered by people who like to get others in trouble or are still trying to define themselves. Many terrible decisions have been made on behalf of freedom of choice. In sacred matters such as relationships, how free are we when we cannot build the kind of relationship we want? How free when we cannot belong to what we want to belong to? So I like this sentiment when there is this village atmosphere, right? I mean, in this very specific culture and situation, when you do have so much support, when you are protected from retaliation, when everyone is working together to make the relationship work because they see successful or unsuccessful relationships either helping or hindering the community, I feel like this is absolutely fantastic. When I look back at many of my previous relationships, many of those I feel just couldn't be helped. Either myself or the other person was truly just in a poor state of mental health or self-worth, and honestly severing ties was probably the best thing. Funny thing is, a reading that I got kind of turned into a relationship reading was saying that my next partner, my forever partner, is going to be a relationship that I'm going to have to choose to stand by and work through issues. And that's scary. That's super scary. It's like having to shed that cloud of fear that's been hanging over my head from being in so many toxic situations from a very young age until now. The idea of essentially finding someone that is an amazing match and having to work through problems is terrifying. Having to set boundaries, terrifying, but we'll see. You know, all of those types of things, any type of clairvoyance readings, etc., are based on the energy of the time and that particular direction in which you're going. And I mean, there are many different outcomes for any lifetime. It's kind of like a choose your own adventure book. Like, the story is still the same, but you can kind of deviate and take detours along that path. So we'll see. We'll see. But I love the fact that in the villages here with the Tagara people, they do work so hard at their relationships, and honestly, it probably wouldn't be as scary if everyone was rooting for you, right? Many couples in the West will break up rather than deal with certain problems. Unresolved problems do not just disappear because we walk away. They will show up under a different face in our next relationship. Every time we move on, we take the ills of past relationships with us to the next one until we finally wake up, bring closure to the problem, and begin the healing process. That, I believe, is also really true. If I had $1 for every friend or boss or coworker or partner, for that matter, completely mirrored one of my parental figures, I would be a very, very rich woman. There isn't divorce in the village because of the way people see things. People there cannot conceive of intimacy or marriage outside of their spirituality, without the guidance of spirit. When you have a spiritual base and the support of friends and family, things work in such a way that the couple is constantly held and given energy. They have enough support to draw strength from. They are not just defending their limited resources. Divorce is a foreign concept in the village, but in the cities of Africa, it is a serious social issue. People in the cities do not marry because they have a tradition to uphold or because they have a purpose to achieve. They do not seek Spirit's blessing. There isn't the focus on the gift that would come out of such an intimate relationship. They have lost the ways of their ancestors. Villagers takes all these matters very seriously to heart. Also, because the elders arrange marriages, it takes the pressure off the two people. They don't have to be totally responsible for their relationship. Everybody shares responsibility. Their relationship has to thrive for the village to benefit from its gift. And so the whole village takes it personally when a couple is suffering. People will do anything in their capacity to make the relationship work. The absence of this kind of support in the West contributes to divorce. There is only so much two people can do to hold their own against even the usual number of problems. Many factors contribute to the frequency of divorce in the West. Money, job conflicts, infidelity, anonymity, isolation. These result from a lack of Spirit's blessing and of community support. In the village, these are not issues. You have to go back to the fact that everything is in the village, including money, is Spirit-based. It is only when money is taken out of its spiritual context that it becomes this huge giant that we have to struggle with. Money was originally intended for spiritual usage. It was taken to shrines and placed there as an offering. It wasn't used as a source of power. It's when we start to disconnect money from its original meaning that we disconnect from Spirit. Then we start to use it as a source of power. Just like intimacy, when we disconnect it from its spiritual base, we cut off its roots, and it becomes this vague thing just floating around without any kind of focus. In the absence of Spirit, money becomes connected to mine and I. And if it's mine, it's not yours. It does not belong to the community and does not have anything to do with Spirit. People make money into a personal thing. It becomes all negative power and no Spirit, giving it so much more energy than what it has in reality. In this case, it can only become an obstacle that divides people. You know, that's so funny. There's this comedian slash spiritual podcaster. I know, right? Fantastic combination. I feel like spiritual people, especially, God, what is her name? Oh, Jenna. Is it Jenna? I have to look her up, and maybe I'll post her in the notes here. I'll refer to it later in a post. But former addict, super spiritual, like very like connected, and absolutely hilarious. Like those are some of the funniest people. But she was talking about, you know, situation in which she was kind of in communion with her spirit guides, and she was given to or came to the light bulb realization that like the universe honestly doesn't give a fuck about money. It's funny. It's like that's why you hear so many people say that abundance or financial abundance or just money, currency, is all based on vibration. If you kind of remove those blockages and allow it to come in, it just does. And her guides were like laughing at her because they were like, it's nothing. It's like candy. You want more candy? Like, know that you're worthy of it and ask for more candy, and you just get it, right? Like, it's not like they give a shit to them. Like, money is not finite, and to a lot of us here on earth, we believe that currency is finite. You know, like, there's only so much and not enough to go around, which is interesting, right? In a place where spirit has been forgotten, a true sense of identity is likely to be missing. And since we have to have an identity beyond our social security number, people base their identity on their work. Many people cannot separate their identity from what they do in their professional life. But when you have a true sense of identity, you don't feel insecure about sharing what you have, and you will never find yourself fighting over the demands of a job. When someone dies, there is a need to separate her energy from her surviving partner. You have to undo the union of their spirits. When that is not done, there will be all kinds of problems for the survivor. He will experience a great loss of strength, and it becomes really hard for him to get himself back together. There must be an acknowledgement that death has taken place and that the other person does not have a body anymore. It is, in a way, like when a woman gives birth. The woman and the baby have been bound together at a physical and spiritual level. Now the umbilical cord needs to be cut for the baby to survive on her own and for the mother to replenish herself. When the umbilical cord is cut, it does not mean that the bond between mother and baby is gone. They continue to bond, but the baby's life support source changes in order for it to survive. Oh, that strikes. That strikes. That really strikes. When one partner dies and there isn't a ritual to separate the couple's energy, it means that although the dead partner has crossed over, the spouse still has to deal with the energy of their intimacy as if he or she was alive. This can be very disruptive, even deadly, because the energy is not moving at the other end. It is very important for a surviving partner to release every ounce of grief she feels at the funeral. Grieving is not synonymous with being weak. It is a source of strength, love, and power. It is a sign that the relationship had something valuable and irreplaceable in it. In the tribe, a funeral lasts for 72 hours, and afterward, a friend always takes the mourning spouse home and nurtures her soul, making sure she is doing okay. Meanwhile, other people go and clean the whole house. The house has to be renewed. All the clothes and belongings of the deceased are given away, and a coming home ritual is done for the surviving partner to reestablish her. A separation ritual might involve symbolically breaking or cutting something to represent the end of the physical connection between the person who has died and the person who is still alive. The surviving partner can tell the story of how they met, how spirit got them together, the kind of spirit that came out of their wedding, about the rituals of marriage, the story of how it began and how it ended, and how they feel at the moment. Is there a void? The community members, friends, and family can also share their memories of the deceased and describe the kind of spirit that guided their relationship and how special the departed one has been for them. They then acknowledge the separation and that the physical part is over. After the acknowledgement, they can welcome the surviving partner back home as one who has lost his mate and yet is still communing with her in the spirit form, as someone in the process of regathering his energy. It is the beginning of a new life. When the grieving is complete and the umbilical cord between partners has been ritually cut, there is still a connection. The spirit of the dead person will always be with the survivor, but it will be present in a way that it will be beneficial to both parties. I've been feeling a lot more feelings, so reading about death and love and life and beauty have been quite interesting. It's death is an interesting feeling to feel. Let's continue on. People in the West are often fearful about letting go of a departed one. They are afraid that without the presence of the body, they will not be able to relate to the deceased again. But this would be only so if a person did not connect with the loved one at the spirit level before his or her death. Although the body goes away, the spirit always remains. Oh, hiya. In the West, a separation ritual can be helpful in the case of divorce. Sometimes souls, when they're brought together, commune at such a deep level that if the couple do not decisively acknowledge the split in this way, it's hard for them to keep going. In an indigenous context, to symbolize the separation of a couple by death, we might use a half-dead vine, a branch on which half the leaves are still green and those at the other end are dead. At the place where they meet, the vine will be cut. This can be done in the West too. In the case of divorce, you might use an all-living vine and cut it in half. A living vine because both people are still alive. Each person might then take a half vine and actually grow it at home. I really like this is ending a relationship or at the end of a life. It's like a spiritual cord cutting or calling your energy back from those relationships that you've severed in life. In the village, people can remarry after their partner dies. They may do so after all the separation rituals have been completed and time has been given to them to mourn and feel the void that the death of the partner has created. In the West, there is a tendency to fill that void with someone else quickly. This does not give a person time to sort things out. The same applies to broken relationships and divorce. But in the village, there is a period of 1 year during which the person goes through many separation rituals. Throughout this time, mourners are closely supported by the community so they don't mourn themselves into depression or death. At the end of the year, they cut off all their hair and give away the clothes that they have worn during the mourning period. In the West, a survivor might adapt this ritual by symbolically cutting part of his or her hair. Dagara people believe that hair is our antenna. We receive messages through our hair. A person cuts off hair in order to let go of something old that no longer serves her, or to help her start a new life without interference from old habits. After the hair is shaved, if, for instance, it's a woman who is still alive, the women give her a shower and then do a welcoming ritual. Then she will go back to her family. The husband's family will always go ask for her hand again and invite her to come back to their compound. She has the choice of returning or not. Only then, At the completion of these separation rituals, she is free to remarry. When we start a relationship, it is acknowledged in so many ways, by ourselves, by our friends, and community. When our partner dies or we are divorced, there has to be an acknowledgement to that effect also. We have to bring a completion to our relationships. The relationship must change and take on a new dimension. People need rituals in order to release themselves, regather themselves, and replenish their strength. This is the way for spirit to begin moving through them again. I like that chapter. It was far better than I remember. The rebirth, the hair shaving, I love it. So on to chapter 13, homosexuality, the gatekeepers. The words gay and lesbian do not exist in the village, but there is the word gatekeeper. Gatekeepers are people who live a life at the edge between two worlds, the world of the village and the world of the spirit. They do not marry in this world. They say they have partners in other dimensions. What they do, they don't like to communicate to anyone. It is their right to keep it to themselves. Everybody in the village respects that, because without gatekeepers, there is no access to other worlds. Most people in the West define themselves and others by sexual orientation. This way of looking at gatekeepers will kill the spirit of the gatekeeper. Gatekeepers in the village are able to do their job simply because of a strong spiritual connection, and also their ability to direct their sexual energy not to other people, but to spirit. That's interesting. The gatekeepers stand on the threshold of the gender line. They are mediators between the two genders. They make sure that there is peace and balance between women and men. If the two genders are in conflict, the whole village is caught in it. The gatekeepers are the ones to bring peace. Gatekeepers do not take sides. They simply act as the sword of truth and integrity. So, this is one of the reasons why I enjoyed this chapter. I truly believe that whether you call people gatekeepers, non-binary, two spirits, there is a very deep integrity and importance in having that special piece of you that can walk on both sides, that can mediate on both sides, and doesn't necessarily fit into the Western binary of, heterosexuality or male or female. It's quite beautiful. I'm going to go ahead and continue on here to see if I still agree with some of the parts of this chapter here. There are many gates that link a village to other worlds. The only people who have access to all these gates are the gatekeepers. I should mention here that there are two different kinds of gatekeeper. The first group has the ability to guard a limited number of gates in the other world, specifically those that correspond to the Dagara cosmology: water, earth, fire, mineral, and nature, because they vibrate the energies of those gates. The second group of gatekeepers, which is our focus here, has the responsibility of overseeing all the gates. They are in contact not only with the elemental gates, but also with many others. They have one foot in all the other worlds and the other foot here. This is why the vibration of their body is totally different from others. They also have access to other dimensional entities, such as the Contambile, probably pronouncing that incorrectly, Contambile, small beings who are very magical and knowledgeable. They are known as leprechauns in the Irish tradition. Now, what would happen if you're dealing with a culture that doesn't care about these gateways? What happens is that a gay person cannot do his job. Gatekeepers are left unable to accomplish their purpose. This is one of the most distinguishing factors about gays in the village. Now, as to their sexual orientation, nobody cares about this question. They only care about their performance as gatekeepers. I figure if they want people in the village to know about their sexuality, they will share it with them. I once heard that one of the reasons why gatekeepers are able to open gates to other dimensions is in the way they use their sexual energy. Their ability to focus their sexual energy in a particular way allows them to open and close different gates. You know, this brings up such an interesting feeling, or I don't know, thought form. When someone is born into a family that does not accept gender or sexual fluidity, homosexuality, in some cases, the gatekeepers or the person that's not in that gender or sexual binary, I lost my train of thought here, they're kind of able to open up their family and their friends. It is as if so many are doing spiritual work to move us forward as a society. I love that, you know, the gatekeepers are revered in the Dagara society. And if you look at it even in a Western context, there can be a lot of strife, a lot of hate, a lot of struggle that they go through. But in some or many cases, if there's even one person in the family, the circle, the community, the church that allows, you know, this gatekeeper to open the door in Western society, it completely changes that dynamic for the better. And I don't know, that's such a beautiful thing, that I do believe that everything is for a reason. That's, I don't know, a connection that I'm drawing. I need to think more into that. The life of gay people in the West is in many ways a reaction to pressure from a society that rejects them. This is partly because a culture that has forgotten so much about itself will displace certain groups of people, such as the gay community, from their true roles. In the village, they are not seen as the other. They are not forced to create a separate community in order to survive. People do not put a negative label on them. They are regarded no differently than any other child of the village. They are born gatekeepers with specific purposes and are encouraged to fulfill the role they're born into in the interests of the community. In the village, gatekeepers must have an eye on both genders. They can help the genders to understand each other better than usual in their daily life. That's why a group of women, for example, might gather and bring a male gatekeeper to help them understand certain village issues. The same thing happens on the other side, with a female gatekeeper coming into the middle of the men's circle. Bridging the gap. I love that. In the village, homosexuality is seen very differently than it is seen in the West, in part because all sexuality is spiritually based. Taken away from its spiritual context, it becomes a source of controversy and can be exploited. In the village, you would never see gatekeepers, or anybody for that matter, displaying their sexuality or commenting on the sexuality of others. Gatekeepers hold the keys to other dimensions. They maintain a certain alignment between the spirit world and the world of the village. Without them, the gates to the other world would be shut. On the other side of these gates lies the spirit world or other dimensions. Gatekeepers are in constant communication with beings who live there, who have the ability to teach us how to deal with ritual. And gatekeepers have the capacity to take other people to those places. A gatekeeper's knowledge is different from the knowledge of mentors and elders. That is because the elders do not necessarily have access to all the gateways. The gatekeepers, on the other hand, have access to all the dimensions. They can open any gate. Although their knowledge is very broad, elders will call upon gatekeepers to help them open a particular gate or help them better understand what the spirit world is about. Gays and lesbians in the West are often very spiritual, but they have been taken away from their connection with spirit. My feeling is that without the outlet or that role in their culture, they have to find other ways of defining themselves. This could be one of the reasons why they would want to get married or make themselves look as though they do not have a unique purpose. You know, I feel like that's something to really dig deeper into. I've noticed that a huge amount of readers, clairvoyants that I work with, that I see, that I meet, are either on that borderline, whether it be through physical appearance, gender expression, sexual fluidity, homosexuality. There is something very powerful that's there and very important. There's actually a book that I was gifted that I probably want to look into a little more if I find any quotes that relate. It's called Outside the Charm Circle, and it's supposed to be, I haven't even looked into it. Like, I don't think I've read past the first page. It's still on my bookshelf over there. But it is supposed to talk about the crossroads between spirituality and the LGBTQIA+ community. So maybe I'll dig into that and post up some excerpts if I find anything worthwhile. I've seen people in the West who have lost their identity try to usurp the role of gatekeeper once they learn about the power it involves. They do this for their own benefit without really knowing what it means to be a true gatekeeper. Being a false gatekeeper is not helpful to anyone. It can only be harmful to the usurper. These people need to understand that in the village, a person doesn't become a gatekeeper out of a desire for power or even because of sexual orientation. No. Gatekeeping is part of one's life purpose, announced before birth, and developed through rigorous initiatory training to ensure that its power is not misused. A gatekeeper is responsible for a whole village, a whole tribe. Gatekeeping is not a game. Even though in the village, homosexual relationships are not commonly the subject of ritual, here in the West they have become so, simply because of the circumstances of life. The ash rituals and almost any other rituals I have described may be used to strengthen gay relationships. What we have looked at regarding intimacy, sexuality, ritual, conflict, and loss applies also to homosexual relationships in the West, because any kind of relationship, unless it's false or empty or superficial, comes with problems, and there is a need to carefully maintain and sometimes repair it. Maybe the only difference for gays and lesbians would be to have other gatekeepers in addition to non-gay family members and friends involved in their rituals. That ends chapter 13. Our final chapter, just a page long here, and chapter 14, Barca. I want to thank every reader for taking the time to commune with the sacred. This is not a trivial subject. Therefore, it cannot be exhausted in a small book. Your response to this book, to the call of its subject, is proof that you feel deeply the crisis in which intimacy has been thrown and the necessity of bringing it into radical healing. For those who are interested in a spiritual intimacy, listen more to the ancestors, to spirit, to the trees, to the animals. Focus on ritual. Listen to all those forces that come and speak to us that we usually ignore. Somehow, what I've said here is ringing a bell. What brought you to this book is that bell. You didn't pick up this book because you saw a crowd lined up for it. This is a sign that something in you is not dead. It's deliberately alive and expects to remain alive. That is something to celebrate. People may say that you're weird, that you are weird, reading about weird people, but perhaps it is time to celebrate being weird. Barca, that means thank you. I am absolutely obsessed with this book. The Spirit of Intimacy by Sobonfu Somé. It literally every time I've read this has given me something new to chew on and something more to explore within myself. And I thank you so much for letting me read these final chapters to you as a bedtime story. Up next, I am going to dig into another quick read, the Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, which goes over basically bringing a beginner's mindset and a fresh eye to everything, whether you've done it 1 or 100 times, because there's always something to learn. And I feel like this third time reading The Spirit of Intimacy and bringing that beginner's mindset has changed so much. I will also start digging in personally the outside the charm circle and post anything amazing that I find from that book. And yeah, this has given me a lot to think about. I wish that I had more rambles tonight. I'm just truly feeling grateful and will be examining my relationships a lot more because of it. This is really short episode tonight, so I will see you next time. I'll go ahead and post on Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind when I get ready to start reading that. Until then, I love you. May you stay blessed and peace out.